Hi guys, Illuminite here with another narrated Age of Empires 2 game. This is going to be my tutorial on how to rush and defend against early attacks. So a rush is essentially defined as an early attack, which would be an attack made in any age that's not Imperial Age. Well, to an extent. There are a couple exceptions, but essentially it's any early attack in the game, which would be about before 30 minutes game time, I suppose, is considered a rush. There's a wide variety of rushes, and in this video I'm just going to cover the basics of how to generically flush. And flushing is a strategy known as feudal rushing, which involves advancing to the feudal age quickly and creating lots of skirmishers, spearmen, and maybe scouts. So when you're playing maps that aren't Black Forest, this goes for pretty much any map that's not Black Forest, except for islands, obviously, is you want to play normally, as you normally would, start with 6 or 7 villagers on sheep or bushes. You just gotta get 6 or 7 villagers on a food supply as soon as you build 2 or 3 houses. There's really a lot of flexibility, so just bear with me. You don't have to follow what I say in its entirety. It's just advice. So you get about 6 or 7 villagers on sheep after you've built 2 or 3 houses, and once that's done, then start building a lumber camp, and then you start putting villages on that. You'll notice I'm scouting with my sheep. That's not necessarily required, but it really does speed up the exploration. It's kind of difficult though, so if you're a newer player, don't worry about it. That's something that you'll pick up on later. So you want to make sure that you're scouting with your scout. So to make that much easier, at the beginning of the game, click on your scout and press Control 1 to assign it to the hotkey 1. So every time you press the hotkey 1, you can right-click anywhere you want on the minimap, and your scout will go there. So that way you can scout without really watching him too much. So once you get a couple villagers on your lumber camp, always start with 3. That's just my philosophy, is once you get 3 villagers in there. If you built 2 houses, you want to build another house. If you built 3, you don't have to. And then get loom, because now it's time to hunt the boar. If you're a fairly new player to this game, you probably shouldn't be rushing, but if you decide to, hunting boars might not be the best way to start out, just because you have to really pay attention. You have to kind of be willing to multitask. If you're going to hunt boars, I would recommend getting loom before you try, unless you are very, very good. So always get loom before it. I like to use it as an opportunity to build a house before I do it. Don't hunt your boars too early, because you don't want to hunt too late either. I like to wait until I have about 11 or 12 pop to start hunting them, which would be around 4 minutes in. Alright, so you shoot the boar twice with the villager, and then you run back to your town center as soon as possible. If you sit around too long, your villager will die. If when you're hunting boars you lose a villager, I would recommend not hunting boars, because the idea behind it is to get a lot of food, and losing a villager is not, would make it not worth it. Alright, so once you get to the town center, you have some of your guys drop off some of their food and start shooting that boar while you have your other hunter, run around and try not to get hit. And then I like to send, new villagers and split them between wood and food. Alright, and then after I get the boar, I like to build a mill right next to the forage bushes. Because if after you put 7 or 6 villagers on sheep, and then you put 3 villagers in the lumber camp, by this point you should have plenty of wood to build a mill. You can see that I'm occasionally clicking on my villagers and forcing them to drop off food. If you're not so good, you can always just ring the town bell to have them do that. The idea in general is that you want to make sure that your town center is always doing something. If it's idle, you're doing it wrong. Unless you're in the Imperial Age, your town center should always be working. To make yourself a faster player, you should minimize the amount of time that your town center is idle. It should always be doing something. And to help with that, you can always press the H key on your keyboard, and it'll select your town center, and then you can press the C key to start making some villagers. You can also customize the hotkeys on the menu, you know. You don't have to use hotkeys, but you gotta make sure that your town center is always working, even if this means force dropping off food by selecting your villagers and right-clicking on the town center. So, you can see I'm doing a lot of scouting and stuff. You also notice that I don't keep all of my sheep under my town center. That, you know, it's kind of a skill that you have to acquire. It's a little more efficient this way because you don't waste as much food when sheep, you know, because they slowly lose food over time once you kill them. It definitely is more efficient, but again, you know, if you're newer to this game, don't worry about it. It's the least of your worries. So after the first boar starts to run out of food, you shoot the next boar twice and you run back to your town center, just like last time. You can see that I have an awful lot of shepherds, and it's definitely not 6 or 7. That's because I want to have a few villagers on sheep, while I'm having like 7 of them or 6 of them hunt a boar. You really want to hunt the boar with like about 6 villagers or so, because you don't want to lose any guys. Losing a villager is really, really important to avoid, even by wolves or something. So after I get my second boar in there, I start building my farms, and then you can see by this point I have about 6 lumberjacks after I've gotten my second boar. And I am now slowly putting a few more foragers on there. I like to go really, really mild on forage bushes when I'm playing, just in general, because forage bushes are actually kind of a slow kind of food income, you know, like I only use them if I'm really desperate, so I like to only put a few villagers on them until the second boar runs out. So, you can see that it's about 8 minutes, 30 seconds in. I got 22 villagers, that's pretty good. This is all from having my town center not idle. I don't expect all of you to be this fast, but you just gotta keep watching your town center, you know. It doesn't show me clicking, obviously, because this is a recorded game, so it doesn't show all of my mouse clicks, only a couple. So, no, I'm not some kind of god who can play magically without using a mouse. Well, I wish, but no. So, after I've scouted out, you know, the basics of my base, I go and scout out the enemy base, you know, see what he's doing. The difference between playing, so what you want to do is you want to play normally up till this point when you get 24 pop, or about that, you know, somewhere near that. And then you want to advance. Whether this means force dropping off food or waiting for you to get 500. Stop making villagers when you get 24 to 25 pop or anything similar. The reason is that you want to get to feudal age faster than you normally would. If this was Black Forest, then you want to make more villagers. So in general, if you want to get to the Castle Age quicker, make more villagers in the Dark Age. If you want to get to the feudal age faster, make less. After my second boar is done, you know, I just divide up the villagers evenly between random sources of food and random sources of wood. When you're playing a rush game and you're trying to get to the feudal age quickly, because that's when the real combat really begins. There's not really much you can do in the way of combat in the Dark Age besides militia, which are effective, and I can show you guys how to rush in the Dark Age in another video maybe. But usually it's fairly common that, you know, people will try and start combat in the feudal age. So I just split up my villagers between wood and food primarily. I'm not focusing at all on gold and stone in the Dark Age. You really just have to look at your resources and say, what am I low on? And then, you know, put more villagers on that. You really want to balance it, so don't be afraid to take villagers off another resource and then put them on, you know, another one. Also, when you're rushing in the feudal age, you want to really go heavy on wood and like minimize the farms, because when you get to the feudal age, the idea is to start putting up archery ranges. You can see I was building a barracks while I was advancing too. That's pretty important. So once you advance, you know, keep pumping those villagers out. That town center can't be idle. It doesn't matter if you want to research wheelbarrow or something, but you gotta be doing something. Your town center should be working all the time. So, once I reach the feudal age, I build 2 archery ranges. If you're not as fast, you know, you can get away with only building 1. But the idea is that we're going to go for a standard, you know, spearman and skirmisher thing. And I know what you're thinking, that those units are terrible. What threat could they possibly pose? And they really don't pose much of a threat. But the thing with rushing is that you're not trying to kill the enemy. You're trying to slow them down. And if you're bad at rushing, and rushing slows you down more than it hurts your enemy, then it's not worth it. So I would recommend, trying to learn, easier strategies before this, but this is not too hard to manage. So, you want to start pumping out spearmen, skirmishers, and go really heavy on wood. Most of your new villagers should go to wood and, forage bushes and stuff. You really don't need to focus on gold and stone just quite yet. We'll get to that later. You can if you want, really depends. One thing that I didn't do, but is the first thing that you should do when you advance to the feudal age, and you're expecting a rush, is to build a watchtower next to your lumber camp. This will keep the enemy troops off it, and it's really, really important that you do this, especially if you're not so good at defending. You also notice that the way that I build my buildings is sort of in a kind of wall shape. Normally I'd be more careful with how I build my buildings in certain formations, except I'm playing against a computer player, so I'm not particularly concerned. 1 second, I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back now, and you'll notice that I'm putting up a couple more farms, and after you build about 3, 4 guys, you don't want to build up too large of an army. What you want to do is you want to get to the enemy base as soon as possible and harass their villagers. The objective of scouting early on is you want to locate your enemy lumber camp. Like, that's the most important thing that you can do with your scout, is to find the enemy lumber camp. Once you find the enemy lumber camp, you gotta harass it non-stop. The idea is that you're probably not going to kill any villagers, but every time you shoot them, they stop gathering. And the idea is that you're going to distract your opponent by constantly harassing his lumbered villagers. And if you cut off an opponent's wood source, they're pretty much done, because wood kind of links you to all the other resources. Without wood, you can't build a mining camp, and without wood, you can't build farms, and you're gonna run out of deer and stuff eventually. So wood is really, really important. If you're, trying to get to the castle age quickly, you should go more food than wood, but in this case, So you can see that I'm kind of fox guarding this lumber camp. That's what you want to do, is, you want to sit there and keep them off the trees. Force them to get the trees next to his town center. If somebody does this to you, you should focus on getting the trees next to your town center, but hopefully this won't happen to you, because if you follow my advice, you will have built a watchtower right next to your lumber camp. So when you see the enemy troops, you just select your lumberjacks and you put them inside the watchtower. You can see that I've been using a little speed up here and there, because I kind of have to. These videos are really long, so I kind of have to do that. I'm getting a lot more farms here. You'll notice during all this time, I've still yet to stop making villagers. You gotta make sure that town center is not idle. Can't stress that enough. If you're a little slow and you're wondering why you keep losing, just make sure your town center is not idle. So, you can see that he is, starting to send troops at me. This is a fairly effective AI when it comes to rushing. Sometimes it's a little slow to the feudal age, but it's a pretty good opponent. It's definitely not the best AI by far, but if you're looking for a sort of different challenge than the normal computer gives, then feel free to download this one. Again, the link should be in the video description. So, you'll notice that I'm just trying to harass the villagers, keep them busy. You really want to avoid losing as many troops as I did. I was a little careless this game, but again, it's because, this is just a computer player, so really no biggie. I was looking for a gold mine, which I did find one, yeah. And he's starting to pour the troops on me, too. It is very difficult to learn to build your base in a strategic manner, but houses are a lot more effective wall early on than you would think, just because they cost only wood. And they're fairly cheap, and they give you pop too, so, they're incredibly useful. I didn't really demonstrate this much in this video, but what you want to do normally is build your houses around your lumber camp. Make sure your villagers can still gather, but just create a sort of wall around your lumber camp, leaving only a thin space for your villagers to come to leave the lumber camp area if need be, or come in. And then the watchtower will keep off the enemy units, because You want to protect your lumber